Going live, we are. What are we doing? Process, it's your off. Data center. Data center. Everybody almost talking. Okay, are we good? Yeah. Okay, great. Good morning. This is Senate Natural Resources and Energy, and it is Wednesday, May 6th. 8 a.m. Actually, it's a little past 8 a.m. Sorry. Very dangerous. Yeah, that's where we're at. Goodness. Okay. Well, so we're going to start with data centers. We have Royal with us, Militia Council with a new draft. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. Good to be here. Maria Royal, Legislative Council. So what you have before you posted online is draft. There's 1.3, so it's an internal draft. But it's basically the first draft of a proposed triennial amendment. To H 727 data center bill. And so what this draft reflects, or should reflect, are some of the requested revisions that you made last week in committee. There are one or two that you made a while ago, which I'll flag. And then there's been a working group looking at the demand side management provisions. So there's some proposed language for your consideration in here as well. So all the new language should be highlighted. Okay, in yellow. Okay. So that said, the first change is on page 1 in the purpose section. I believe you wanted to specify under the purpose that the regulatory framework is in a manner that financially benefits the existing electric payer.
And of course, right off the bat, I have an edit.
Okay.
So just because the sentence it needs a little something. Because it says purpose of the subchapter is to regulatory framework ensures responsible growth of industry in a manner that financially benefits electric ratepayers. And then I think it needs to say something like and protects from unwarranted costs. Otherwise, it's financially benefits from unwarranted costs.
Yeah.
Doesn't really make sense.
You're right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. I think we can do both. Financial benefit and protect from unwarranted costs.
And protects them.
Yes, yes,
Can you use them in statutes? Actually, now I'm thinking about it.
I don't know.
You can use them.
I think, yeah.
Editors are telling me not. Again,
Okay,
Excellent. So then the next change that I believe you requested last week is on page 2, and I think you wanted to lower the threshold of the data center from 20 megawatts to 10. It's
and
online.
this is a point I know there's been some discussion about. One possibility is we go back to 20, if that is more appropriate. And would love to have some further conversation about that. For now, just for the sake of expediency, happy to flag it and keep going, unless people have opinions about that.
And we're not that, so there's something about.
Would you like to weigh in on 10
Sure.
versus 20?
Yeah, Candace Morgan from Green Mountain Power. I think that when we're looking across what other states have done for a threshold in similar bills or in large load tariffs, it's often north of 20 megawatts, and obviously other states are different in their size and scope than Vermont. But we still feel that 20 is the appropriate size for what we have looked at on the grid in terms of what we're really focusing on for these types of customers. We don't want to catch more than is appropriate for sort of the provisions and protections that this bill is contemplating. So from GMP's perspective, at least, we feel like 20 is the right threshold.
Do you? Are you at liberty to say like other comparables? Like who else would have 10? What are we talking about?
Yeah, I mean, we do have a couple larger industrial customers that are around that size threshold too. And then certainly when you look at some in an aggregate, they're at that threshold as well. It's not a huge amount of customers, but it's not unheard of for us either to have some of the larger industrial folks. I'm sure you kind of think of them in your head a little bit, but to be close to 10 on either side of that. And so having that be the threshold just feels a little bit low compared to what this bill is contemplating for sort of the size and scope of the regulations and the protections in it. We don't wanna, catch too much essentially.
Okay. I think that's not.
I was okay with that as well, unless it happens to you.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay,
So the next page is, really just a technical drafting change, and that is to define electric company so that it's clear throughout the subchapter, we don't need to specify. So in this context, in the subchapter, an electric company means the retail electric company that provides or will provide electric service to a data center pursuant to the large load certificate contract. So again, just so we don't keep adding the qualifying language. So then, under the contract itself, and the terms of the contract. On page 3, I believe we wanted to amend that language a little bit. This is about protecting ratepayers from costs incurred to meet the demands of data center. And I think you wanted to word it a little bit differently, so we'll see if this makes sense. Ensure that other ratepayer classes are insulated from all costs associated with data center deployment, including expenses for new generation, transmission, and distribution infrastructure, as well as energy capacity and resource adequacy costs. So I think one of the issues that came up is you didn't want to interfere with the regional transmission formula, if there were upgrades to the transmission system that benefited the region. That you didn't necessarily want to say the data center pays for all of that too, if other states benefited, they would contribute, so I think. It was kind of narrowly drafted to just say they're protecting existing ratepayers, they won't incur costs, so.
and I think I heard that we are. I'm wondering if this language works for you. Regarding. Velcro stocks.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't have the draft, but also.
Okay, so we can also come back.
Here.
What I was understanding from, my understanding is that. The formula only applies really to the maintenance, whoever incurs the cost of. The need for the upgrade pays for the upgrade, in this case, the data center, so, because everyone benefits from the. Upgraded. Infrastructure, that maintenance is what socializes, not the upgrade of the extra, so I've learned something.
Okay, wait, but. Is that what you just said? Cause I thought.
That's probably both, and I would defer to
Okay.
Delco, and I think there may be upgrades that are, required by a data center,
Mhm.
but may also benefit other users in the region outside of Vermont.
Okay,
And so there is a formula,
Mhm.
where Vermont pays a certain percentage, and then other states pay a percentage based on the best, so.
I
That,
think this language works. For us.
would we
Right.
want the data center to pay Vermont's portion of it?
yes.
Okay,
But
and that's
not
what-
rate,
yeah.
so it's just
Got it.
protecting the ratepayer, and then however else is appropriate for the state
Okay,
to handle,
okay, that makes sense.
that's the intent.
And I think this works, but if you have any information, please.
I'll send it to the contract, Chris.
And then just a question on line 11. I wasn't sure if you wanted to specify the minimum duration of the contract. I know we kind of talked about it, or if you just wanted to leave that.
I was thinking on the 6 years, 6 or 8 years. But
As a minimum,
as a minimum,
do we wanna specify a maximum?
I wouldn't specify a maximum, unless, what do you think? What
Well-
the reason for a maximum?
The reason for a maximum is that once there's a contract, it's sort of locked. If the
Yeah.
things change. Rates change, technology changes, I don't know, things like that.
Yeah, that's
You
a
wouldn't wanna lock it in so much that you can't get out of it.
good point.
Don't feel there's side of that, ways they need sort of,
Yeah,
Exactly, yeah, so.
the minimum. Part is, we're about stranded costs.
right.
And, We actually talk about specific costs,
We talked about it in a couple of places, so in, here, for example, subdivision 4. There's a requirement that the data center pay a percentage of their projected use. Based on the duration of the contract, so. However that money would be recovered over its cost of contract, they have to pay a certain percentage no matter what, even if they leave the state, that's 1, and then that's in 4. And then in subdivision 6, there's a collateral requirement sufficient to mitigate the risk of stranded costs, so there are some built-in protections.
And what do you, I mean, we can also come back to it, or,
In terms of the maximum.
yeah. Another thought is, to have check-ins along the way, but that's sort of a different thing than you've been locked into a contract with specific terms.
by the way, even though I said. Need for certainty, I also understand what so we, in a way, it's covered in this transportation. But that is. Part of the finish.
This is a point about which I don't necessarily feel super strongly, so if we wanna leave it.
The maximum.
Or
the minimum.
Yeah.
State duration is covered. That's.
Yeah, maybe we just say specify the duration.
Okay.
I mean, these are all things that are basically what we want in the contract.
Yeah.
Can I ask about this with the, maybe Candace can weigh in?
It was behind you.
I know it was behind me, it's good.
Not just you.
Everyone is like, everyone's behind me.
That's right, that's good.
Yeah, anyway. This weekend, I read or saw something about this data center dispute in Michigan, and one of the issues about it was the lack of transparency and what was in the contract. And I'm just wondering, I mean, obviously contracts usually are confidential because they have business, confidential business things in them, but I'm wondering about transparency for the sake of Vermonters saying, okay, we know that this is. How do we know that everything is in the contract and what, that they're. How do we know they're following the laws? Not that you guys would, but that transparency on the contract, that was a huge issue in that, I know that's a huge issue in other states, so. I don't know
Yeah.
how much we can say we need to actually see this contract.
Mm-hmm.
We need maybe the PUC or the. Some
Sure.
level of
Oversight.
of transparency for. The public to feel like it's being done right.
How can we build in some transparency? I like that. Yes,
Sure, Candace Morgan, Green Mountain Power. As I understand it, I mean, so any special contract that we enter into with any customer, we have to file before the Public Utility Commission, and this would be obviously different, they'd be reviewing it. Going through and checking to make sure that it meets all of these requirements, as well as our regular principles of rate making and things of that nature as well, so. I think unless we all specify that it wouldn't be public, our process would be transparent. In terms of both, but and whatever utility is filing at the commission, and then the review process would also be public and folks could follow along, similar to any of our other tissues.
So is the contract itself public?
Yes.
When you buy, oh, okay, alright, and
Oh, there.
okay,
so we don't need to specify that. That it's would be part of the PUC.
I think what you're seeing in some other states is, they're not as fully regulated as we are, in Vermont, and so that's where we, you know, everything that we do is, public reporting.
Okay, that is unfortunate, thank you.
Okay. Let's keep
So
going.
number on page 4. Subdivision 7, and this gets to the demand side management provisions. So include provisions requiring implementation of demand side management operational measures for the purpose of maintaining grid stability, efficiency, reliability, and resiliency, including demand response and flexible load management that practices that at a minimum satisfy the requirements of section 285 of this subchapter. And so there are a number of new proposals under that section 285, which we'll look at. And then the other thing is just, you know, and as I was looking through kind of the metrics and the criteria for assessing the state of the grid, stability, efficiency, reliability, and resiliency seem to be kind of the 4 metrics that are looked at. So wherever we talked about them, I just included all 4. That's why they're added here.
Great.
And then there's a new provision on line 7, subdivision 8. Specify that the data center is designated as a primary load for curtailment during grid emergencies. So this gets at the load shedding issue about disconnecting the data center before other ratepayers.
Just want to check in with Candace. Seeing. This language is okay with you?
Yes.
Okay, great. Super.
And then, moving on to subsection C, line 14, this is not new language from the general third of the state. This is actually a question that Senator Beck answered. What does that actually mean? And as I mentioned, it came from section 248, which is a siting statute that covers new generation facilities. So I just reached out to the PUC. I did a quick search. I couldn't find an order that says these are the criteria. But Greg Faber did respond, and he said basically it just means they look at all of the findings that they're required to make under that statute. And just on balance, you know, everything taken into consideration. And it promotes the general good of the state. So it's just a broad term.
So general the good of the state in a way is like a term of art for the PUC?
In a way, but specific to what the context is. So the context of this statute is, you know, the data centers given their contractual terms and then based on all of the findings, the required findings, which come in subsection D. Looking at all of those together.
So if you asked, you said you looked through some orders and you couldn't find.
I did, but I didn't send it.
Yeah, obviously, I don't
Yeah.
have a ton of time right now, but so what if we said that we needed them to document their analysis of how they found it, this is the general of the state. So then it would be clear, this is why.
It's a good question to ask, PC, they might write an order, as Candace was saying, they go through a proceeding, like whether it's a special contract or a rate making, at the conclusion of which. There very well may be an order specifying the terms and approvals, so they may do that, but. I can check and make sure they do that.
Okay, it just seems like we would want to have their analysis of how they went, which went to 248 and make it determined that.
Is there a reason to not? I mean, we can put it in and then see if they object, but other than that, I mean, is there a reason to not? Ask them to also, you know, to make it clear that and please document.
I don't think there's a reason not to.
Okay,
We don't even say,
we don't have a,
we don't even say things.
oh yeah, I know, right. It's true.
They provide.
Stickers. Sorry.
Provide the rationale for why some months ago, it's all based on the findings or something like that.
Yes, yes. Provide rationale, yeah. Mhm.
Okay. And then subsection D, this just reflects, language that, or a proposal that was suggested by DEPSA, the Non-Public Power Supply Authority. Asking that the commission be allowed to look at the different circumstances or particular circumstances of the utility. In the event that, some of these findings might not apply or shouldn't apply. So it just says, the commission shall find that the terms of the contract meet the following criteria. Unless an electric company demonstrates good cause for a specific exception. So I'm not sure, what the concerns were of the findings, but anyway, that's just a proposal that we received. I believe it was $10.
I'm feeling uncertain about that one.
Good cause for an exception. So that they would not have to do one of these things if they could provide a good cause.
Yeah,
I would say no.
I would agree. Let's just, they will meet the following criteria,
Period.
colon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay. So then in terms of the criteria, there are 6. We start on about page 5. So, just to go through this again, just adding it as one of the common metrics. Subdivision 3 is just, now that electric company is defined, just using that term. Subdivision 5, actually, I know that we actually went through these like line by line. I think this is about the point where we're trying to slow down, so I don't know if you want to get through them or.
So, because I did. Just to be clear. Because at the bottom, on line 19, that's where we jumped to like the new section that we had talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fine to go sort of through the majority of page 5 here, and then we'll be back on track to look at new language.
Okay.
Yep.
So again, these are findings that must be made. So this is findings of the terms of the contract, 1.
Actually, if I can, I'm sorry,
Sure.
back on page 4 on line 18.
Yeah.
I think I'm just caught up on this phrase shall find. Which is to say that like, are they obligated to find these in the affirmative? Or like, do they have space to be like, nope, they didn't do that? Does that make sense?
The way it reads, they shall find that it will not adversely.
Well, it's shall find that the terms of the terms of the contract meet the following criteria. So can they say, and if I guess something like shall evaluate and not improve unless.
So you could say, before the commission approves a contract, I was going to say, that's fine, the commission shall not approve a contract unless it finds.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that, I feel better about that. Sometimes you have to find this. Right.
So, 1 will not adversely affect the stability, efficiency, reliability, and resiliency of the electric power system. 2 will result in an economic benefit to the state and its residents. 3 are consistent with the principles for resource selection expressed in the electric company's approved least cost increase plan. 4 are consistent with the electrical energy plan approved by the department. 4, there exists good cause to permit a variance. 5, will ensure that the data center will be served economically by existing or planned transmission facilities without any undue adverse effect on Vermont utilities or other regional ratepayer classes. And 6 are consistent with environmental justice and equity policy as established in Vermont law. Title 3, Chapter 72. So those are the required findings. And then in subsection E, line 15, the data center shall not be eligible to participate in any energy savings account or customer credit program, as they're authorized in Vermont law, or self-managed energy efficiency program. So in Vermont law. So in other words, they have to pay the energy efficiency charge. There are no some commercial enterprises or businesses or industrial users can take advantage of different programs. It's the same. So then we get into some new language concerning demand side management. And just to be clear, for on page 6, what's listed in that first subsection B, this was the language that was passed the House. It's not highlighted. And among other things, I think you had some concerns is that this wasn't really fleshed out enough. When would you do this? What is actually, this just required the data center early in the design development of the data center to consult with Efficiency Vermont, about compliance with efficiency requirements. So what's proposed here are much more specific requirements. So we'll just start at the top with the general purpose statement to this section. Line 1, subsection A. The purpose of this section is to mitigate any adverse impact data center operations on Vermont's electric system, other ratepayers, and the environment. It aims to minimize peak demand increases, reduce associated costs, and enhance the grid stability, efficiency, reliability, and resiliency, while minimizing climate pollution emissions and maximizing benefits to Vermonters.
My only thought is I have a newfound aversion to the word mitigate.
I should have known that.
Yeah, which is at the top.
Okay.
Decisions to mitigate. First, I mean, like maybe it's appropriate. I kind of want to say minimize any adverse impact. Is that minimize is okay? Sure, that gets at it. Okay, thank you. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so subsection B, this is new language. So this was kind of an initial attempt to get a greater specificity about the design of the facility. So it would require site suitability analysis. And it specifies that prior to submitting an activity permit application, the owner or operator of the proposed data center shall conduct a site suitability analysis. This analysis shall be developed in consultation with the electric company and Efficiency Vermont. And the analysis shall provide a preliminary assessment of the facility's capacity to 1, comply with the commercial building energy standards in Vermont law. 2, maximize the deployment of on-site renewable energy generation, battery storage, and demand response assets. 3, participate in a self-managed or utility-managed virtual power plant. And 4, implement a waste heat recovery system capable of providing thermal energy to adjacent municipal or residential buildings.
I have a question, which is. Cause I like the site suitability analysis, I like how. Fleshed out that is, but I am not as clear. Is it option one versus option two? Right, like this, we have to choose.
You don't, you definitely do not have to
Oh,
choose,
okay.
but I would say,
I think that was my confusion, was like, do I have to pick one?
you know,
Because-
pick one, you might incorporate, like, put them together, so.
Okay.
I think option one is kind of getting at that consultation to make sure that the facility, before they actually engage in the final design of the data center, that they have had a consultation and making sure not only it complies with the commercial building energy standards, but if there are any other best practices.
Yeah,
So that's, so it's sort of, yeah. So anyway,
okay,
whatever you think, you can.
I don't think we need one if we do two, because or two has more detail, but.
Yep, Mr. Vigil.
Yes, thank you, for the record, Ben and Julie Walsh, would be for, in reading through this, and in particular, how it would interact with, and you haven't gotten here yet, but the distributed renewable generation piece, towards the bottom of page 7. I had a similar thought. It feels like this site suitability analysis, the way it's written, I read it as sort of a first pass. Like, you've got this site, you're about to submit an application, and you're just saying, here's the potential to do these things. And from our perspective, for both the end of option one, to ensure, which is a concept that isn't totally baked into, from my read, into the site suitability analysis, to ensure compliance with state energy efficiency requirements and best practices. And then also something like maximizing the potential of the site and any structures on it to host renewable energy. That those two things it would be really important to dictate that those two things be part of the actual site design, which seems like at least some of the site design work would happen after the site suitability analysis is completed. So that there would have to be a site suitability analysis, and also they would have to, in figuring out how they're actually gonna build this thing, meet efficiency requirements and best practices and maximizing potential for renewable energy on site. Just if I may provide one example of the sort of thing that we'd be concerned might get lost deliberately or inadvertently in the mix. You can construct a large commercial building like a warehouse, which is in many ways essentially what these are, in such a way that it meets snow load requirements. But once you're adding ballastic solar to the roof, the structure can no longer support both snow load and the additional weight of the solar. So unless that is actually fully incorporated into the design of the structure, you could wind up with maximizing renewable energy, actually having no renewable energy on the roof of a structure that was underbuilt for renewable energy and snow.
So maybe it's something like they do this analysis. And then there's a requirement that they incorporate the what they defined in Luges.
Yeah.
And the design of the building.
Feels to me like that would go after the site suitability analysis. That there would be. Because I'm appreciating that. Thought that the site must be able to. Actually host renewable energy, as. Is perhaps recommended.
Well, maybe you could say that, the analysis should provide, preliminary assessment facilities, capacity to meet the requirements of this section, because.
Because later it's going to.
Right.
To that.
I
Mhm.
mean,
Where in the bill is the section that, about the Act 250?
water or
Just in general, they have to go through Act 250.
so that is actually very well on page 10. Section 2, these are the definitions.
Oh.
So what constitutes development that would trigger Act 250?
Got it.
So the construction of improvements on a tract or tracts of land or in the center as defined in. And then I think this committee had suggested a while ago, specify including land within a tier 1A area. Notwithstanding anything to the contrary, in section 6034 of its title.
Yeah, that makes sense, so that no matter where it's located, they can't get out of it.
Municipality.
Yeah. Yeah. The reason I asked that is because it does seem like the design, the actual design of the building is going to be under the purview of Act 250.
Mhm.
So I don't know if we need to add something there about this stuff.
It's a good question. I could imagine it being both, just belts and suspenders it. Marie, is what we're talking about, I feel like we're not giving you like specific language, but is the intent here clear enough? But like the building's gotta be structurally. Or something about like the company has to meet the requirements. That are provided in the analysis. And then something about the analysis has to include. Recommendations for the building to host. Renewable energy.
I mean, maybe it's that they do all these things in this preliminary site suitability analysis, they do this analysis. If they find in this analysis that they can't do anything, but do all these things with this site, then the site is not suitable.
Hmm?
I mean, the analysis is about. Excuse me, whether it's suitable, right?
Yeah. Yes. That's really enough. So so. This is an analysis that's done by.
The company just trying to put in the.
Well,
Yeah.
it's
The restaurant company had efficiency in Vermont.
okay.
Do you want to hold that thought for a second and just kind of go through what the requirements of this,
Yeah.
how they're written, and then see maybe there's a way to.
Sure. So I'm gonna just flag that for now.
Yeah.
Let's keep going.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So subsection C, page 7, this waste to combustion based backup generation. Diesel backup generation, for example. And it specifies in 1 that the data center shall limit the use of combustion based backup generation to only emergency situations involving power failures and interruptions. And instead prioritize to the greatest extent practicable the use of battery storage and on-site renewable energy generation.
Yeah.
Great. And then there is a definition, that's used in the subsection, combustion-based backup generation includes any electrical generation system that emits air contaminants as defined in, Title 10.
And this is actually 50? No.
No, it's not actually 50, I think it's an air quality.
Okay.
And I think one of the issues that was brought to my attention is that you can have biodiesel, which might emit air contaminants, so you want to capture all of those as broadly as possible. So
I do wanna pause and just say, cause I know we're just cruising through this and I just wanna wave to Terry. And say, you know, feel free to chime in. If you have any.
I'm listening, I'm enjoying the conversation.
Okay.
Haven't heard anything to comment on yet.
Awesome,
So
yes,
so back on line 8,
yes,
it would be a little clearer if we simply said a data center shall use combustion-based backup generation only for emergency situations.
yeah,
But the use of is a little squishy,
okay,
but it's just crystal clear if we say the data center shall use combustion-based backup generation
oh,
only for emergency situations.
sure,
Yeah.
yep,
Okay, so subsection D,
yes.
so line 15, subsection D gets to the distributed renewable generation topic, so taking into consideration the site suitability analysis prepared in subsection D and any other relevant factors, the data center shall maximize the construction and operation of on-site renewable energy generation to the greatest extent technically feasible. A renewable energy plant that directly gets air contaminants from fuel combustion does not qualify under this subsection. And then a data center shall transfer any renewable energy certifications or certificates or environmental attributes generated from the operation of plants constructed pursuant to this subsection to the electric company.
Mhm.
And then subsection E, the energy transformation payment. This specifies provision 1, because of the unique and significant demands the data center has on Vermont's electric system, it shall contribute proportionally to state initiatives that reduce fossil fuel consumption and greenhouse gas emissions. Accordingly, a data center shall make an annual payment directly into a fund managed by the electric company. Payment shall be used to finance energy transformation projects, as defined in Vermont law. And to the extent practicable, such projects shall be deployed in the community hosting the data center and the surrounding communities. The amount of the payment in subdivision 2, and I need to add some language here. Right now it says the amount of the payment shall be equal to 60% of the data center's electricity usage for the prior calendar year. What got lost in the graphs are the rate at which the unit of measure, the kilowatt hours, will be charged, and so there would be a reference to the alternative compliance payments under the regs, and as I understand it right now, it's about 7 cents per kilowatt hour. So I need to put that in. Then 3, subdivision 3, line 14 specifies that in the event funds generated by this subsection are used to support projects that are also supported by the electric company under subdivision, under their requirements, under the regs, or by any other regulated entity, the commission shall prorate the reduction of fossil fuel consumption and greenhouse gas emissions credited to the regulatory entity. So not double counting.
Yes, Mr. Randall.
Thank you again. One thought on this, and I think, again, I apologize, I'm sort of jumping ahead just a little bit. Although just a little bit this time, related to the virtual power plants. I would suggest it's worth at least considering these energy transformation payments not being allowed to go to energy storage specifically, because the virtual power plant really should be driving a lot of that, and wouldn't want a situation where the energy transformation payment is sort of just paying for the virtual power plant work that should be done for other reasons, and is otherwise required. Not a incredibly strong feeling, but I wanted to raise it as a possibility. Or it could be simply that some language specifying that it has to be over and above any virtual power plant.
That sounds fine. Yeah, because they're already gonna be doing virtual power plants, so there's gonna be a lot of energy storage associated with that. So you're saying, don't use this money for more energy storage. Yes, go ahead. Yes.
Different, so it's like Virginia, I think it's actually fine, it could maybe worth clarifying that it still could be in the bucket of what could be used under those tier three,
Mhm.
the transformation payment,
Mhm.
but would need to be added to, you know, what else that's done. We wouldn't want to include it for the option in the payment.
I would say that that is the core point that I'm trying to make, probably inverted the way that I said it, but yes, that is. What we would be driving, that's the virtual power plant would be. Adding benefits that are over and above anything coming from the energy transmission units.
Okay.
Okay, so maybe on line 8,
Mhm.
the payment shall be used to finance energy transformation projects. That are in addition to whatever's required, not from them.
You could say, energy transformation projects. Including. Load reduction. Efforts. But, we can fine tune some language and provide it.
I'll throw out the suggestion. You could leave this alone and put it in the virtual power plant section as a 3 that simply says. So, you know, not trying to wordsmith, but essentially any anything deployed under section F has to be over and above / additive to, and then cross reference to the energy
To this.
transition. I mean,
I like that option. I like leaving this alone. And then. And then if we need to be more clear about the virtual power plant. Additive nature, then we'll put it there.
Only other thing I'll mention on the payment of rate is. Maybe just getting a little more, you just wanna make sure that it's proportional.
Sorry, where are you now?
So I'm just talking about this section and
Okay.
it goes rate and
Yeah.
what it's used for. You know, kind of the 3 factors that you would look at
Mhm.
with respect to this kind of a contribution. You know, it's not discriminatory, these are the other industrial, similar other industrial users and data centers are maybe. To some of them, maybe because it's 24/7 operations. And then as this does, there's a nexus between the payment and what it's used for, offsetting carbon, right? So I think that's pretty clear. Just making sure that the amount is proportional, in other words, so I don't really have any information on that, but it's something just to flesh out a little bit to make sure it's. That's all. That's all.
Okay, well, we're gonna come back to that anyway.
Yeah, no, there are others who can speak to that more specifically, so. Then we get to the virtual power plant section, so section F. Line 19, a data center shall participate in a virtual power plant managed by the electric company if available and technically feasible. Otherwise, it shall design, implement, and self-managed virtual power plant to optimize energy generation and consumption. And then there's a definition, and 2 is used in the subsection, virtual power plant means a network of distributed energy resources, such as batteries, demand response assets, rooftop solar, and controllable loads that are coordinated through software to function like a traditional power plant.
On line 5, I'd like to replace rooftop solar with renewable energy.
Renewable energy.
Yep. Generation. Mhm.
And then maybe some additional language that along the lines of what Ben was suggesting.
Um. Did you have anything to add? No.
not beyond whatever. So,
Okay.
Can I get clarity? What it's supposed to say before I?
Oh, well, I think this is good.
But I think Ben was suggesting adding
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right.
11 from before the conversation about above and beyond what
Yes.
municipal power plants.
Right, so if we add, yes,
yeah,
the additionality of the nature of commercial power plant above the energy transformation.
yes, that's the concept that I had suggested. Happy to work on language, outside committee, but in very rough terms, something like. Any assets deployed to support this subsection. Shall be additional to. And then cross-reference, subsection E, which is energy transformation. Hang on.
Yeah.
So pretty close, I think.
Okay. Okay, great.
So then report sections, just clarification, so section headings. These are the quarterly reports that they need to submit. Documenting their water and energy usage. Including peak usage per day and also an itemization, I'm just on line 13, itemization of the data center's payments for shared infrastructure constructed to support the data center. Then subsection B, this is just the annual report that you'll receive from the department as soon as the data center becomes operational in the state. So the Commissioner of Public Service shall include in the department's annual report.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Before I forget, under A, the quarterly reports. I just want to make sure that it is clear that these are public facing.
Oh, okay, and can add that.
I feel like, yeah, that should be true for all of them. I don't know. It'd be kind of funny to make a report that we're just gonna hide, but
And so, yeah, so the record or the assessment in the department's annual report, a report that comes to the General Assembly. So they would include in that report findings and findings and recommendations related to the energy, environmental, and economic impacts of data center construction and operation in Vermont, as well as any impactful developments within the region, including any benefits to all ratepayers from electric infrastructure projects undertaken to provide power to one or more data centers. That's all we're gonna get a word for like a decade. 10 years ago, that was not. Significant.
Yeah. That, yeah.
Okay, page 10, 37, the human authority for the convention to implement and enforce this subchapter. Section 2 is the application section. It's stricken here only because it's moved to the end of the bill, because it seemed like it should also, the application should apply to the Act 250 and the whatever water permit requirements. There'd be a similar application, so it is addressed again. We'll get to the applications in a different section bill.
sorry, so this is just moving,
It's-
basically, okay.
Yeah, so it won't just be specific to this subchapter. It will include application of the Act 250 requirements as well.
Okay,
So section 2, again, this is the trigger for Act 250 review and the definition of development under that chapter. And includes a new language that this committee suggested a while ago, so the, any construction of improvements on tract or tracts of land for a data center including land within tier 1A area, notwithstanding anything to the contrary in section 6034 of its title. Make sense?
Oh, sorry, yeah, did you have something?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, we're all good.
Okay, so this is the only place that really references Action 50.
Yes, although the water, provision section 3 is part of the Act 250 review, it's in that chapter.
Oh, okay. So that's gonna be sort of embedded.
Yeah.
I am wondering if we can take a pause, because I had concerns about noise and I wasn't sure quite where this would fit, but if anything, it seems like it could fit into Act 50 related stuff. So I had said, hey, Maria, what could we do about noise? And so Maria came up with some language. And so it's not, I didn't embed it in the draft because I wanted to like float this with you all first and get feedback. If this is too much, want to know, but wondering if can you briefly walk us through this noise provision?
Sure, so, so you could add it to the, where the water provisions are, again, are in Act 250. That's the next part. So this relates to noise mitigation, and what I looked at, not being an expert at all, noise issues. The PUC has a rule 5.700 that applies to wind generating facilities and sound level thresholds that they need to meet. That rule is 13 pages long. So one, I don't know if it's appropriate to apply to data centers, but at least it's a reference to start from. So that's where I got the limits from. They may or may not be applicable, but the starting point. So this specifies that the land use review board, and probably should change this, it says in consultation with the PUC. I don't think you need to include that. The idea was the PUC has these rules. You might want to talk to them about the implementation, right? But just to be clear about who's the adopting authority, I think I would start that in consultation with PUC. Shall adopt by rules, standards, and procedures related to sound emissions from data centers. The standards and procedures shall be consistent with the requirements of this subsection. So these are so the sound pressure limits. So data center operations, including HVAC and generators, shall not exceed the following sound pressure levels at the measurement point established in subdivision 2. So these limits, Roman numeral 1 and 2, reflect what's in the rule regarding facilities. Again, I don't know if they're appropriate. And then subdivision 1B says that the limits established in subdivision A shall include any penalties for formality as established by the land use review board. This also was modeled after PUC language. And my understanding of the penalty for criminality that certain facilities can make is a drone or a whine or humming sound that's particularly annoying. And so if it does make that sound, then there are additional decibels added to the limit, right?
So if it's like at a particular frequency,
Right.
it's
added
special treatment.
5 decibel, right, so. And then in terms of the measurement of the sound levels and compliance, sound pressure levels shall be measured in accordance with either international standards, and they're defined below. But pretty universal international standards measuring sound pressure, among other things. Measurement shall be taken at the data center's property line closest to the nearest sensitive receptor. So this is language, it's taken from the PC rule, and also I looked at the existing kind of how the land use review board currently looks at noise levels. There's a whole test that they have to, so the Quishu test. Right, I don't know if there are limits in there, but it looks at the surrounding community, it looks at particular, like sensitive receptors might be a house or school or a hospital, it categorizes them. And those are kind of the. Whichever one is closest to the property line, that's where you would take the measure, that's what this is getting at here, right? So it's a proposal. So permitting and modeling prior to permit approval, so that would be Act 250 permit approval, the data center shall submit a pre-construction sound modeling report conducted by a certified professional, which shall include the data center's expected maximum sound pressure levels, baseline ambient sound levels, predicted sound pressure levels from all combined operating equipment, and a certification of projected compliance with the requirements of this subsection. And there's a provision for post-construction monitoring, and these all again kind of follow the basics of the PUC rules. The data center shall be subject to periodic sound monitoring. If levels exceed the limit, the data center shall implement mitigation measures to achieve compliance. And then I wasn't sure, within 30 days, 60 days, whatever. And then the definitions for sound. And so sound pressure is the more specific unit of measurement as opposed to just noise. The A-weighted decibel level is the unit of sound measurement that filters frequencies to mimic the human ear's sensitivity to noise. And then again, the ISO standard is just referencing more specifically what they are, the International Organization for Standardization's current standards for the description, measurement, and assessment of environmental noise. And then just a definition of sensitive receptor, any off-site location where quiet is of significance to the occupants or the character of the area, including residential dwellings, educational and healthcare facilities, and public and recreational spaces.
Yes. The monitoring, who's responsible for doing the monitoring?
So presumably, I don't know if the land use review board would contract the specialist,
Yeah, no, that's not something that is their expertise. It would almost seem, I mean, who does the mod for a PUC,
I'll see if I can quickly find that, I don't know if they contract with somebody, oh, okay, this construction.
I'm just sensitive that we're giving tasks. Yep, they're not in the room. It almost seems like it might be in our or public service department.
Yes.
I also I have dealt with this in activity with sound, it's really swirly. To figure out what will drive people insane, and it's not necessarily just decibel levels.
Okay.
It's up and down. It's pitch and there's a lot of things going on in this. So I just want to make sure that we do this. When we say the maximum, that doesn't become the default. That the board the commissions have real authority to take into account every consideration. And so it's because one proceeding where I thought, oh, this will work, and then I realized this week again that it will drive people insane. So I just want to make sure we're letting this in the way it gives the commission real authority to take into account kind of the totality of the evidence.
just how annoying is it?
So, you know, I know whatever 42 doesn't tell the story,
Yeah,
doesn't tell what the story. So we have to be really careful about it.
so maybe it's a combination of decibel level, tonality, frequency, pitch. Modification, or like we list the characteristics that we want them to use in making it cool or something.
And they make, that's really what it is.
Yeah.
Have the characteristics that make in a way that allows the commission to use really site-specific analysis and totality of.
Well, and one thought too is that the sound that I think has been so troublesome elsewhere has come from the jet engines. And if we are saying that you really can't use the jet engines unless it's emergency, then generally this shouldn't be a problem. At least that's one.
It's the jet engine backup
Yeah,
power.
well, that's one hypothesis. I suppose it could be the running of the machines themselves. I suppose that's possible.
When they turn on to
Yeah,
That's what I was saying.
analyze, they do this like high pitched tone and
yeah. Mr. Leslie Walsh, did you have something to add?
Yes, and then Beaver. It gives me no pleasure to say this, but I would argue that this sound standard is almost certainly far too restrictive if we have any openness to a data center ever being sited in the state of Vermont. You've heard, spent quite a lot of time digging into science around health and annoyance as well around sound in the wind sound standard proceeding. Strongly opposed this specific standard being far too restrictive. See it essentially as a ban on the construction of new wind turbines in the state of Vermont. Definitely agree that there are very legitimate issues with sound from data centers, and also with Senator Bongart's that sound is a very tricky issue to regulate. I think it would be a very good idea to have some sort of perhaps Department of Health-led study analysis report on the specific issues related to sound from data centers. We're not, don't have the capacity this time to suggest a specific standard or standards related to data centers, but this particular one would be a big. And the last thing I would say is, and I have not in several years done a deep dive on the science, but we did when the wind sound standard was being considered, hired an acoustic engineer that had both supported the construction of in opposition to wind projects at the time. And we strongly argued at the time and believe last time I looked at the science that these particular standards are not based on health in any way, and actually not largely supported by science or annoyance.
Okay.
So you more about the things that this commission should consider.
Sound is considered, as I understand it, under the aesthetics criteria that you were saying about 250. Certainly you could build out that in some way, although Act 250 is not my wheelhouse. But you could have some additional direction around sound related to data centers. I would also say, given the likelihood that any data center development in this state is likely to be more than 12 months from now, that a study or analysis that informed legislative deliberation on this issue next year would still be very productive.
Or just consider that the commission has the aesthetics quite now, and
And just call that sufficient.
it's what they do. It's
Okay.
part of the analysis now.
So calling it out may not be necessary. I'm open to them.
It may not be, it's part of the process.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't wanna put in a standard that, yeah, isn't the right standard and,
It's the danger.
Right,
yeah.
this was kind of a, hey, let's do something. What
Yeah,
can we
no, I
do?
hear you.
So,
I think it makes sense to think about the noise component, because I think it's an issue, but if Act 250 already has a way of dealing with it,
mhm.
that might be good enough. And the Department of Health doing a study, I'm a little hesitant to give them work when they're not in the room. They'll undoubtedly say they don't have staff to do it, and they'll have to hire a consultant to get the money to do it.
Yeah, Senator Beck, any thoughts on this?
I agree, I think that, I mean, if there's a process to deal with noise for Act 250, then we should just rely on that until we truly know what we're doing.
Yes. Senator Williams, anything to add on this? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just
I
didn't have my
think, you know,
charging, Courtney.
I appreciate the
Right.
discussion. I think it's kind of like oversimplify it,
Yeah.
building a bus. We don't know, we don't know how many passengers we're gonna carry. We don't know how wide the road, no? Can't hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay,
Sorry, go ahead.
it's just, I think, we need to make sure that the law says that they have to comply with everything that we've got, Act 250. Because we don't know what they're gonna propose to build. And go back to the, the solar panels on the roof, they may not be able to do that. Depending on, what they have to have over the top of it, so.
Okay. Okay, I am happy to set this aside for now, based on the conversation, wanted to raise it, but thank you, everybody, and thank you, Maria, for coming up with a first stab, so I appreciate that. I think we are ready to move on.
We are, I could just mention a couple of quick things and then turn over to Mike.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Right, so after the water sections, I'm on page 15. Section 5, which is the decommissioning plan, recommendation. So, so this is the Commissioner of Public Service. That recommends regulatory model for data center decommissioning, and one of the proposals that you've heard was just to ensure that with respect to the approval of the decommissioning plan by the appropriate regulatory entity, that there is a clear delineation of authorities, more than one entity is involved in the approval process. Which means, yeah, so you can just slur there, a bunch of that, so there's information there. And then the other thing that you asked about on page 16, it just included, so the plan shall reference or the guideline, the standard shall reference guideline for data sanitization. And I think you wanted a more specific reference on what is data sanitization. So what's referenced here is the storage device sanitization and instruction manual prepared by the National Security Agency and the Central Security Service of the U.S. Department of Defense, which is one of the more stringent standards. That describes the process and need for making data unrecoverable. And then finally, so obviously the application section is down at the end. So basically it's the same application as what was in the Title 30 provisions, but it now just includes the Act 250 provisions as well. So it shall apply to any data center not operational on the effective date of this act. In other words, not the existing and smaller traditional data centers. As well as to any data center that uses less than 20 megawatts of power that is operational on the effective date of this act, but only to the extent it seeks to expand its capacity to meet the threshold requirements.
And this 20 is a reference to the previous 20.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Then if we had 6 with 10, it would have
Yeah,
been, we were paying
right.
10, but. And, okay, and. Okay,
All right.
great, thank you so much. Any further things for? Okay. Okay, thank you so much. We're gonna switch now to, I guess we're going back to section 3, but water use, cooling and permitting, et cetera. Welcome.
Good morning.
How is the committee doing? Would you like to, like, take a quick break if you need to stretch?
Hello.
Ready to keep going? Let's just finish the Okay, let's keep going. Great.
Section 3. We have page 11 of the draft, and this morning. So how would you like me to proceed?
Well, I think we need to walk through this at a detailed level. So such that we can make changes as we go. There you go.
So page 11, line 6, there will be a new section added to Act 250 regarding water use and cooling for data centers. The first subsection is definitions. The first definition relates to the cooling systems used, closed loop cooling system. You will see later on that is a required cooling system. So it's a sealed cooling process in which the same water coolant circulates continuously within the center's cooling system without withdrawal water from municipal public water supplies, groundwater, surface water, and without discharge of wastewater to the municipal system, groundwater, surface water, except for de minimis discharge is authorized by A&R under the discharge permit. I'm going to talk to you a little later on about maybe an alternative to prohibiting closed use, closed loop. But moving on from this definition, data center C definition that Maria walked you through. Then you get to the definition of PFAS, per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. This is the EPA definition of PFAS. This is the universe where there's 1,500 chemicals that fall under this. It's about having the chemical structural compound 103. The debate is whether or not to use the PFAS definition that is broader, that is used in the state consumer products laws, that is basically anything with a fluorinated compound in it. And that's a universe of about 15,000 chemicals. So that's the universes that you're doing. On page 12, line 5, subsection B, a data center identifies to the district commission how it will cool the facility. Water is going to be used. The data center shall use the closed loop cooling system to minimize impacts to quality and quantity of surface water during review and determines that the use of closed loop cooling system is not feasible at the proposed data center. So here's where I would say you have kind of a choice, because this is kind of saying if there's water to be used, then you have to use closed loop. What you really want to do potentially is ban open loop systems, because open loop systems are the ones that draw down all are the ones that are really responsible for the volume, major volumes that are used at data centers. There are other cooling systems that might use water that aren't open loop or closed loop, like air conditioning. You know, you might have an air conditioning system that needs some water to run, and so this would prohibit that, because this requires the closed loop system. And so what I think your concern is the vast volumes being used, and that's coming from an open loop system. So that's a consideration.
So basically, do we want to allow for AC units? that, or other tech.
Or whatever
Yeah.
they come up with that's not an open loop system,
Mhm.
or you could probably put in there contingency, an open loop system, or a system that requires withdrawal of surface water above a certain level, you know, something of that nature.
So on line 8, instead of saying a data center shall use a closed loop cooling system.
So the data centers shall be prohibited from using an open loop cooling system.
We have no, it seems okay to me. Okay,
Well, I mean,
yes, good.
I just,
Oh, no, okay.
yeah, and I just don't know, I mean, just as I don't know what I don't know. What data centers, like. What's the variety of, I mean, if we say no open loop, are we basically shutting down the state? So, yeah, so,
No, I don't think you are. Other states are going the way of limiting open loop or requiring closed loop. My point is, I think just requiring closed loop takes away other alternatives besides open loop. And I think that I do think that open loop systems are used elsewhere, and they are the ones that are generally responsible for the vast volumes of water. They're the ones that lead to the companies that effectively building public water supplies so that they can use the water. So that's a policy decision. If you want to go with open loop and say open loop, legal negotiators.
I mean, I'm not saying I do want to go to allow for the open loop, but I think we really need to hear from the industry, obviously, if. You know, what that means to the industry, that makes sense.
And by the way, I do have a from the industry who is going to be supplying written testimony.
Okay.
Great, but what I will also want to highlight is that I think what I'm hearing is from the suggestion from Mr. Brady is actually the suggestion that you're making is actually more permissive than what's in the bill right now.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking there too. I think what he's suggesting would
These one from
Give
it
them
gives them
more.
more options. Than what's in here already. So by just prohibiting the really bad thing and opening up the possibility of using other system, you would have to add a definition of both systems.
Yeah, well, and along with that, I think you'd want to include. Well, I was gonna say include some volume of water used, but then of course the thresholds mean that you use, 99% of that. If you include some kind of threshold, so that's tricky, but I'm thinking about the possibilities, if someone. Put in an air conditioning system, but it wasn't really an air conditioning system, it was. Something that was air conditioning, but it's still gonna use. An incredible volume of water, but it's not technically open loop, like how do we know when something's in an open loop? Yes.
So, something, there's like no circumstances under which I want data centers using a lot of water. So I'd rather not have to. I mean, frankly, consider it food, but you're just wasting water, not an option. And so I'd even like to say, actually say closed loop or other technology that
Approved by the district commission
that does not, it reduces volumes, part of the public, yeah. As staying de minimis, yeah, so similar to the minimis. Something like that, so I'd rather have.
Okay,
Rather than say no, it was completely open, I'd rather say closed loop or alternative technology that.
yep, okay, how are you
Recognizing that. Yeah, I'm open to that.
Okay.
I mean, I think ultimately. It's how much water, right? It's
Yeah.
not whether it's closed loop or open loop or something, it's how much water they use.
Yeah,
And what they do with the wastewater.
And what happens to them,
Mhm.
exactly.
Okay,
Um,
Now, those states, I don't know if it's worse, but most states are completing their groundwater, I don't know if they're trying to add.
yes, I agree.
No, that's not a long-term strategy.
Yeah, agreed.
page 12 on 13. If water is used to cool a data center through a closed loop cooling system or through another type of cooling system. Probably should say approved by the commission. A data center shall identify where the data center will obtain water to cool the facility, where the clean water will be discharged.
I lost you.
You're on page 12 on 13. That's okay, thank you. So basically, they have to use water, that's approved. They have to identify where it's coming from and where it goes. So. Okay.
I mean, just. You know, the groundwater issue, I mean, does this leave open the possibility, I'm not sure if it's a good idea or a bad idea. But, you know, you take groundwater out. And you put it back into the ground, does that option exist here?
Technically, yes. So you will see it for groundwater, page 12, line 17, if the data center proposes to use groundwater to cool. The data center shall obtain groundwater withdrawal permit. But later on, you will see, and that's regardless of whether or not they exceed the 57,600 gallons per day. That's the threshold for large bodies. Groundwater withdrawal permit, and frankly, if they're 20 megawatts and they're using groundwater, they're going to exceed that. Yeah. But you will see later on that they will have to get any other applicable permits. And that requirement would include what would be called it's on page 13, line 8 through 12, any other all applicable water quality and water resource protection permits. What you're talking about is taking the water out and then injecting it back. That's called an underground injection permit. And there's a permit process for that.
Yeah.
So if they were going to do that, they would have to get a UIC. So, so it's still a possibility. I would think that with the groundwater withdrawal public trust in Vermont and the groundwater withdrawal strategy, which is intended to prevent a groundwater use from affecting other uses, including drinking water, to the extent that it effectively eliminates that use. You're gonna have a hard time getting a groundwater withdrawal permit for a body that's needed for time. Because I don't think you're gonna get that public trust determination. Maybe hard, yeah.
So I'm gonna go back to page 12, line 10. Because this is, so if water is used to cool data center, they should use the closed loop cooling system to minimize the impacts to the quantity of the surface water. And on the one hand, I would love to just have a period right there. But I'm thinking about the conversation we just had about using closed loop cooling systems or something else that's de minimis in its use.
I think I'm gonna need to rewrite that.
Okay.
That last part.
Right, well, because I'm thinking like, because unless the district commission during review determines that the use of the closed loop system is not feasible. I don't want that to, right, like we've got to rework that, because I also don't want that to be a backdoor to an open loop system.
That I think lets you go to page 13. Line 3, the data center proposes to use surface water to cool the facility, they shall obtain surface water withdrawal permit. Rules adopted by the Secretary of implement the surface water withdrawal permit shall require the data center to cease withdrawals from the drought condition. You require A&R to issue a surface water withdrawal permit. It's supposed to be available July 1 of this year. It's not going to be because the rules have not been adopted. The agency expects the rules to be adopted in the fall for implementation sometime in 2027. So even if you pass this today and the data center wanted to come and they wanted to use surface water, they wouldn't be able to get a surface water withdrawal permit until sometime in 2027.
Okay. That's the reason.
Page 13, line 8. Data center shall obtain all applicable water quality, water resource protection permits from A&R, stormwater, shoreline, stream haul, direct discharge, surface water withdrawal, groundwater withdrawal, wetland, or development. This is a bit of a bootstrapping because these permits, if your activity is gonna trigger these permits, they're already required, but it's noticed, for lack of a better concept, they would need everything that's applicable.
Somebody flagged for me that the shoreland permit, baked into it, it says something like, if you need this and you don't need Act 250. And so, like, if we're going to mention shoreland permit, maybe we have to notwithstand that.
I will look at that. I don't recall that.
Okay, there was something. There was something sort of conflicting about that, and I'm not the expert on that, so I'm just relaying to you what I have heard.
I think I understand the concept because Act 250 already has effectively some shoreline provisions that are baked into the criteria.
Anyway, just want to flag that. If it needs, I'd like to keep it as the intent here, and so if we need to.
It also does say where applicable.
Okay,
So if you have the Act 250 in the Lake Shoreland language says you don't need it, the Lake Shoreland permit, then it's not applicable.
okay,
So, but I would need to check that out because
okay,
I wrote the Lake Shoreland law, but I don't remember that component.
that's fair, and if it turns out to be a non-issue, great,
Okay,
let's keep going now.
sure. Page 13, line 13. Data center shall obtain from A&R water quality certificate that meets the same criteria that the agency requires to be met for a 401, federal 401 water quality certification. I think you probably heard testimony from A&R that they don't like this terminology. A 401 certification is required from the state when a federal permit is needed, and that proposed activity under the federal permit would involve a discharge to state waters. So, federally permitted dam. This is an example, and so A&R goes out and does a suite of studies about whether or not the proposed activity will meet the state's water quality standards. If the activity will not, the certification either says it won't meet the water quality standards or proposes conditions that the activity could implement in order to meet the state's water quality standards. I think you probably have heard about this, about Marksville Water and Light, their dam at the reservoir, and how that's being negotiated. But the issue is this is a state permit. This isn't a federal permit. It's a state permit. And A&R is a little concerned about imposing a 401 certification on a state permit. I think there's a way that you can achieve the intent of this section, which is to have certain studies or certain analysis done, that's part of a 401, that may not be part of a typical permitting process. But just say what those studies are, say what that analysis is, don't reference the 401. And I think that will achieve the intent of the subsection without creating fines about
Okay.
Well, what are the studies and analysis?
Well, I would defer to Jared on that, he's the one that's looked at that specifically and what the advocates want in the specific studies. I don't know what specifically they want.
Okay. Mr. Carpenter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jared Carpenter, Lake Champlain Engineering. We do have proposed language that includes all the studies that I can hand out with your permission.
And it is all also online.
It is
Posted.
correct, it's posted. But I have some copies here on the John Lewis. We had 3 proposed changes.
Thank you.
One you covered already, the closed loop. And this specifically lists, if you turn it over to the second page, the last paragraph, it has a trigger of 300,000 gallons, if there's a large water withdrawal and it connects it to the surface water permitting. But it lists the studies that need to be done, because this would be a unique project drawing a lot of water. It is based on the studies that are normally done for a 401 water quality certificate. But it doesn't use that terminology, but instead lists them out. They have to do with flow, they have to do with erosion, habitat, endangered species. I mean, they're there. That you can cover those bases.
That sounds, so you're proposing that as a replacement for E2
Correct.
instead of referencing the 401.
Right, strike out
Right.
to reference to 401 water quality certificate and just include that language which covers the same basis.
Well, and my question about this is, so if the data center proposes to use more than 300,000 gallons a day, I mean, I'm happy to do that, like, sure, that seems great. And if we're saying you can't have an open loop, or you have to have only de minimis usage of water, are we gonna get to 300,000 gallons a day?
Yeah, the 300,000 gallon a day number was chosen based on those open loop before you had the conversation about
Okay.
us having the closed loop. So maybe legislative council has a suggestion for a trigger level.
It's a little bit difficult because we don't have a surface water permit, right? We don't know what the threshold is gonna be. And so, and therefore we can't build off of that to what might be more in need of review or necessary review. So it's hard for me to say that this is the appropriate number or not.
Okay, so in the absence of a surface water permit, we could use this language. And then revisit it after we do.
I think it's not a bad idea, and you could say. You could even. Say until the surface water.
Yeah.
Withdrawal permit is available if they. See 300 gallons per day, they have to do this. And upon issuance of the surface water withdrawal permit. District commission shall evaluate when the. Studies required, or. One shall be required.
Okay,
That would work.
that works for me.
Yeah.
That seems like a great alternative, Madam
Okay.
Chair. We anticipate the stakeholder process to start with the surface water permitting in July, August, and we will include this as part of the discussion when we all
Great,
start with.
yes, go ahead.
So I'm sitting here, on the one hand, having a hard time imagining how much 300,000 gallons of thing is as it relates to other uses and I'm sitting there going, well, why are we talking about 300,000 gallons a day if we talk about closed loop system? And doesn't that almost suggest that it's okay to go there? So I'm finding it incongruous. We're saying closed loop, not using water, basically. And yet we're then saying it's more than 300,000 gallons a day. that, well, again, I guess what we hear from the industry.
Well, what does the word use mean? Because even if it's a closed loop system, they're still using water.
Right. Well, I think you water is a one.
Yeah,
But is that what this,
Yeah.
I thought it should be the time.
yeah.
But,
oh, okay,
Mr. Groveman, oh, sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Thank you. For the record, John Groveman, Mount Regional Council. Because the way Jared wrote the language, it connects those items to the surface water withdrawal permit. Maybe just say if you need that permit. I think Mr. Grady is correct, we don't know what the threshold is gonna be, but if you need one. Even for a closest, because it could be a lower threshold. Then you have to do those studies. This is the trick. We want data centers to do study and not everybody else, right? That's the tricky part, right?
I mean, a closed loop system still isn't, my understanding isn't really closed loop, it still uses water, it just uses about half as much water as before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't use 300,000 gallons, Senator Vargas is correct, that's for, that's like the minimum for, an open loop system, basically, it goes from like 300,000 to like over 1 million gallons per day.
So something that might be useful is if we had a sense of what the minimum was for an open loop system, or a closed loop, like what if?
Yeah.
So if we can,
I can
just
look into that.
for expediency.
Yeah.
Let's go with the project that we were talking about and adjust that 300,000 gallons down to
That's.
what a reasonable level for a closed loop system would be. And Mr. Grady, you feel comfortable looking into that?
Yep.
Fantastic. Okay, let's keep going, because we're almost done, and then we gotta move to the bottle bill.
So on page 13, line 18, the data center that discharges wastewater into surface water, the state shall identify PFAS that may be used in the operation of the planned A&R establishing a program that monitors the wastewater discharge from the data center, including monitoring the presence of PFAS, and monitoring plans that will be approved by A&R on determination that it's not water quality standards. So I think monitoring of PFAS is not the most certain thing. EPA has a couple of different protocols. One is very specific, but it only monitors about 50 PFAS. One is very general, and it monitors for the presence of fluorinated compound. And so it may not actually identify PFAS and might identify something else that's fluorinated. That's kind of a policy call. Right now, you have a definition of PFAS, it's the EPA definitions, the 1500 universe. The data center would have to submit a plan on how they would monitor for that. Those are used both protocols that EPA uses, the specific and the general. I don't know, it's gonna be up to the data center and the district commission agency to determine how they're gonna do the monitoring for PFAS in any discharge.
Mr. Carpenter? There you go.
Just to throw a little wrench in the works, Madam Chair, for that, I apologize. We had on the first page proposed changing the definition of PFAS from the EPA definition to something else, which John can speak to better than I can.
Yeah,
Yes,
Madam Chair,
yes, go ahead.
these issues are all rolled up together.
Yeah.
So, and Mr. Grady referenced this earlier. So, and this is a long time debate that you've heard about, do we regulate the whole class of PFAS, or do we regulate just a certain subset of PFAS, or the definition in the bill now is one of the larger subsets of PFAS based on an EPA program. Like, for example, in Vermont, I think Mr. Grady noted like for drinking water up to like 6 PFAS, when you look at the different compound combinations out of literally 10, like over 10,000 compounds of PFAS. And from the advocate's point of view on these issues, when you play whack-a-mole, it's like you pick a subset and then, you know, that means some PFAS ends up being allowed, or so in Title IX, of Vermont statutes, so consumer protection laws, we do actually define PFAS very broadly. Basically as the class of PFAS. So we were suggesting using that definition for the prohibition, like you shouldn't be able to discharge any PFAS in waste, and Mr. Grady did, you'll look at that definition, and he made a tweak to it, which I support. But then for monitoring, I do agree that there are issues with monitoring, and I thought that the way the bill was written was that the applicant and the agency has to develop, there has to be a monitoring plan developed that the agency needs to approve. So the way it was written, and I think it's still written, is that the agency, there would be discretion, in terms of what the agency would require monitoring for out of the tens of thousands of PFAS. So, to sum it all up, we're saying let's prohibit the discharge of any PFAS. So if the monitoring done by the watershed group, or it comes to the attention of the regulator that there is PFAS in the water that's beyond like the baseline of PFAS that's in there, that is not allowed, and changes need to be made at the facility to deal with that. But the monitoring plan should be tailored to what is feasible or reasonable, and then because we're going to the district commission, they would be, the applicant would submit, and hopefully they would agree with the agency, that would go to the district commission that would decide whether that passed muster or not. So does that make sense? There's two issues. What are we prohibiting? And we're saying prohibit the class. What are we monitoring for? And that'll be determined by the agency and the applicant, or through a monitoring plan. And that way we begin to address, the whole class of PFAS that all can be harmful if they are present in the discharge. Because John said something that I think you need to consider, and he said beyond the baseline. There's going to be a discharge beyond the baseline, because PFAS is already in the water. And so how do you determine what is being discharged from the facility that was in the water to begin with, or what was added? So if you're gonna have a ban on discharges, you might have to determine what the baseline is, and I don't know if A and R can do that.
This is not what I'm here for.
So for the record, Matt Chapman, Director of Waste Management Prevention.
I'm sorry you came early.
I guess in my job, I also do a lot of coordination on PFAS related work with the department. I think there are a few things that are important to understand. One is that EPA does not have a uniform definition of what PFAS is. Each one of their offices have come up with their own definition for their own particular uses on what a PFAS is. It is not the greatest thing from a regulatory perspective, and it may change over time, but that is where things are as of today. I guess I would say that I would draw a distinction between the consumer products program and the regulatory programs. And this distinction primarily is that we're focused on the intentional addition of PFAS in an industrial process in those consumer product programs, which is different than regulating by incidental addition of a PFAS from a process. And from that standpoint, you're going to be focused, my opinion is, not being deeply involved in this, is that we're going to be focused on the, roughly speaking, 40 plus chemicals that can be monitored under EPA standard method 1633, which is the most that we can test for in surface water related materials. And as I think Mr. Grady said, for drinking water purposes, Tom may have said it would be regulated 6. There will at some point be a surface water standard, but there is not one today.
But I would just add that I think it's a lack of that standard that puts us in this conundrum, because we don't have anything basically to go on in terms of what is allowed and what is regulated, what's harmful,
Mhm.
always.
Yes, we have Mr. Driscoll.
Thank you, Bill Driscoll, Associated Commission of Vermont, because I testified on this issue last week, and just wanted to follow up. I highlighted concerns, the underlying language from the House sets a prohibition that would include discharges that the company arguably could not control, number one, and arguably, it's really, I don't think could be confident they could actually obtain. This language is even worse in that sense, in terms of being even more difficult to track it and obtain. So it's effectively a moratorium on data centers, which that's, policy decision in and of itself, but it's doing so in a way that's putting a PFAS prohibition on the books that would be almost impossible for, I can't imagine any company that would be comfortable with the idea of complying with this requirement. So I followed up yesterday with further comments and recommended amendments that I didn't see on the website yet, but if you need them again, I'll resend them. But yeah, I would say that this, if anything, this is actually making those concerns stronger. And I think it has a lot of consequences.
So I will just say I feel a little bit muddy on this particular case and don't know that I have clarity. Do not any of you have clarity on like what you would like to see? Okay, not sure. Senator Boggins.
Don't want to end up, don't want to excuse me, in fact, in the position. And yeah.
And yes.
And yeah, we don't want feedback.
Yeah. So knowing that like we should move on to,
I have seen another committee,
okay, so
force everything.
this is a part that I would like to have more conversation about. And hopefully we'll revisit it.
So
Let me just have this one more second or.
I mean, the last provision is related. It's on page 14, line 3 and 5. It's a data center is prohibited from having PFAS any discharge of waste, and I believe that is effectively what it's just closed.
Okay. And that's it. The rest of it we covered with. Yes.
So I do have some markup to do for you. Banning closed loop systems. But for others that use water at more than its amendments rate is determined by the district commission.
And look at the shore.
Shorelands and so that's.
You said banning closed systems of.
There you go.
Allowing those
Well, having, yeah,
right
you down close to
for systems
yes.
with and
Right.
water use. And I'll be back at 10:30 if I can.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I would like to take a quick break, just a couple minutes. We back in.
Hey, Jared, can I ask you?
Yeah.
Okay, this is Senate Natural Resources and Energy coming back from a break. We're gonna hear from a couple of people and then, hopefully Mr. O'Grady can join us at 10:30 and we'll walk through this graph. But for now, and otherwise not on our regularly scheduled program, speakers. Wow.
So thank you
Tell us
for-
about, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I have been retained by a coalition of redemption centers to serve as their lobbyists for the rating session. So I'm working with Shane and 11 other redemption centers around the state. So we were able to connect as a group yesterday for the first time. We appreciate the RGA's guidance and support through this process to this point. So we discussed yesterday, the redemption centers will continue to advocate for the 1 cent increase. So the 4.5 cents that is currently in the previous draft. And we would also ask for the committee to consider the opportunity for redemption centers to negotiate as a group. And that would be on a voluntary basis. There are some smaller redemption centers that would prefer to negotiate separately, but there is a solid group within that dozen or so redemption center group that would like the opportunity to negotiate with the Bureau. As a group. Additionally, we've always held the position that we want to maintain some point of stability through the transition from the current system to this potential PRO run program. Making that transition is operationally unclear for these redemption centers, so they want to make sure that there's guaranteed stability. Again, that's part of why we're asking for the continued increase in utility.
And so would you describe that as like a collective bargaining, an optional collective bargaining?
So we'll call it a collective negotiation.
Okay, yeah. I think that's fair, particularly since it's a little bit different. I suppose.
Yeah.
So,
Each one is so different. But anyway.
well, and if they're not compelled to participate, there's no option for them to participate in this collective negotiation. Okay,
Not shall.
right. Okay, and
Is there anything else?
do you all have any opinions about the diversified rate for single speed RVM?
The tier,
Yeah.
So
If not, that's okay.
we haven't discussed that, but first reaction is that they're all being required to redeem the same container, they're all required to provide this service, so why wouldn't it be a consistent rate across the board?
So you're saying keep it the same, right? Yes, go ahead.
I would just add to that, based on the report from the DEC did in 2014. That report showed that the cost to operate an RVM or redemption center per container was very minimal. There was a very minimal difference. And so, and just to note, that was 3.4, I'm sorry, I would have to look it up, but it was very minimal. And I'll just note, because I don't know exactly what it is off the top of my head, that report said that at the time, it cost 3.6 cents per container to redeem bottles. And, you know, here we are now in 2026, and then, you know, coffee gone up a lot since then, so it's something to know. But what I did find out from that report was that it's very, very similar.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, anything else? Okay, great. So we're gonna move now to Ms. Neely. Welcome.
Hey,
Yes. Thanks for being here.
thanks for shuffling.
Yeah,
Oh, that's for late, but
it's all good, no worries.
this is, Watson, members of the committee, my name is Bree Deeply. I am a consultant for regional consulting in Somerville, Massachusetts. I work for the Beverage Association of Vermont, the non-alcoholic beverage distributors in the state. I do similar work for state beverage associations all around the country. I work on positive issues, but I also work on extended use responsibility programs and other environmental solid waste policies. So thank you for having me back. This time in 3 sessions as opposed to 2. Always nice to see bodies and manifest myself in real time. We have the bill has changed quite a bit since we last talked. And I want to reiterate a couple of points and then make some new points. One is that I do want to reiterate the fact that we have about 180 million returns every year here, and about 2% of them are handled through machines of some sort. That is the lowest level of automation of any deposit state in this country, possibly every jurisdiction in the world that also. So this is the most manual you can get.
Can I ask a question about that?
So Vermont.
One possibility, do you mean totals or like per capita? Just because like percentage, oh, percentage, okay.
Yeah, and so what we're doing is handling these things multiple times, up 6 times by the time it comes in, gets sorted, gets counted, gets bagged, gets picked up, gets put in the pickup area, gets picked up by the driver, gets hauled as a full bottle of can across, in some cases, 2 state lines to Connecticut, to be counted again and processed. So not super efficient, okay, so we are paying now $7 million in handling fees every year to operate a redemption system that is effectively a manual system. And we know from past experience, because we've seen this movie before, that when you add funds in the form of a higher handling fee, 2 things happen. One is nothing changes, like the system stays the same. And 2 is more redemption centers open. So there will be more people who will open at 4.5 cents than there are at 3.5 cents. And what that means is more people chasing fewer containers. So there'll be more cost pressure. If the system doesn't change, even within 3-year time horizon we're talking about here, there's going to be a need to have an even higher handling fee. Maine sits at 60 cents right now. It's the highest in the country. It's one of the highest in the world. And what they've done over the years is simply go through that ladder of keeping the same system, paying a higher handling fee, having to pay more. Right now, there's proposals for it to go to 10. That's $2.40 on a case of beverages just for a handling fee. So, yep, it's
What is Maine's level of automation?
about 20%, 20 to 25%.
And we're 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Interestingly, in Maine, about 75% of the returns come through independent redemption centers, not retail affiliated. Here, we're 75% retail affiliated and 25% independent redemption. So Vermont is still very high on the retail percentage of take back.
And by independent, you mean that
That's all retail.
that's all they do? Okay.
Yeah,
got it.
yeah, and as you raise handling fees, that proportion shifts. So 12 years ago, 15 years ago, New York was 75% retail. They went to 3.5 cent handling fee, a bunch of retail redemption centers open. They are now at 75% independent redemption center and 25% retail. So the automation in New York has collapsed actually because people have shifted to manual redemption because the handling fee went up to 3.5 cents. 6. So there's a real dynamic in terms of what happens in the system as the things to handle.
There's another question.
So
Yeah, sorry.
I would wonder, and we should have to comment this, whether people would actually open the centers even with the higher incomes if they know the PRO is on the horizon.
I think yes, because number one, the PRO can't compel anyone to do anything. And that's kind of my closing pitch here. Independent of the. So let me answer that first and then make another point. if you tell me that right now I can keep doing everything I'm doing, and 3 years from now I can keep doing everything I'm doing, and you're gonna give me a 29% raise, I'm gonna keep doing everything I'm doing. Right, I'm not gonna go through negotiation, I'm not gonna fuss with this PRO, some consultant from Canada, blah, blah, blah. Who's gonna tell me where I need to put this machine and how, and I don't care if you're paid for it or not. I can just cruise, get 29% more money and not do anything. The PRO is completely disabled in that case. There's nothing it can do. Can't compel anybody to do anything. If it's a collective to negotiate with, or I don't care who it is, they don't have to do anything. If the PRO is in the position of negotiating with a bunch of folks who don't have any incentive to negotiate, there won't be any reform. We're gonna end up back here in 3 years saying, that really didn't work very well, because nothing is changing in the system. So in the meantime, a 1 cent handling fee between now and program implementation is gonna cost the industry collective $5 million. So that's $5 million of new consumer costs between now and then. On top of, what we're already paying. At most, the pro, if everything works out, will get 3.5 million back. Between 2030 and 2033, maybe 3.5 million. They're gonna have to pay 5 in the meantime for the privilege. So we're. The benefit, the sort of. The motivation for us coming to the table with a system that it's already gonna cost us more. We're not proposing a form that we're gonna save money, it's gonna cost us more. More operating costs, more administration, we're gonna set it up, figure it out, it's gonna cost a lot of money. I wouldn't be extreme to say that there was kicking and screaming going on amongst the membership of our association, independent of where the beer guts are on this. This is not something we're all rushing into. And so to stay on top of it, hey, here's a $5 million tax that you did pass on to your consumers for the next few years, because they're paying diesel. Obscene diesel prices right now, we're doing aluminum tariffs for the roof. That's a no-go. The ones that handling fee increases a no-go. That makes us, that we walk away from this proposal at that point, because the economics are just good for marginal, get bad, and to your point earlier, it probably undermines the very nature of getting into the reforms in the first place, because nobody says.
Do you have anything to follow up? Okay.
Okay, so. The handling, you said earlier in your testimony that increased handling fee would mean there would be more redemption centers.
Yes.
And right now, in many parts of the state, we need more redemption centers. We might not need more redemption centers in, downtown Burlington, but we do need that in rural parts of the state. And so without, and if we don't increase the handling fee, at least in the short term, we're gonna lose some of the redemption centers that we have, and we're gonna be in a worse place in terms of where people can return their bottles. So how I hear you on the disincentives on the other end, but how do we incentivize keeping the redemption centers we have and increasing them in some places of the state over the short and long term without increasing an investment in the system through an increased fee?
Right. The capacity and mix of redemption centers has been remarkably stable over time. There have been closures. When something closes, someone buys it. A lot of the centers that have closed have just changed hands. So if I see that, I see updates to the list and new owners and new facilities, sorts about it. There's a beverage business, and there's constant turnover in this, same among independent redemption centers as well as stores. One of the problems in rural areas is that there are retailers who are compelled to take back containers who don't do them. Every retailer, go back ancient history, a while ago started, there was no handling fee. This was an obligation of retailers and distributors, as you sell it, you benefit from selling it, you pay, you need to take responsibility for taking these back into your store. And you need to take responsibility for going and picking them up as a distributor. So that's how we started. The notion of redemption centers came about because stores were willing to support redemption centers that were not in their stores to open up. And a handling fee was created, and independent redemption centers were created, and originally, if you look at the statute, the state had to approve a dealer-sponsored redemption center. So that was not a thing, it was just the dealer's obligation. So there was never an intent that the handling fee, for example, cover the expense of this. It was an obligation on the retailer. The handling fee was some compensation to them, but they were supporting the redemption centers. Now, over time, we've evolved into independent redemption centers, which don't get support from retailers. They are wholly dependent on the handling fee. But we have a raft of retailers, especially in rural areas, they're called dollar stores. And they don't touch a single return. Walk into any Dollar General, Dollar Tree, Dollar anything, and ask to return a container, and they'll tell you where the nearest one is. And I've done it in places where it's a half an hour away. They won't do it. So that's an issue. And, you know, I don't see, and I don't have experience saying, you know, there's places that are like deserts. That is addressed in the bill. Obviously, there's a coverage requirement in the bill.
Yeah.
How many have to have in different places. I'm not aware of sort of any major issues with that right now, but my short-term solution to that is make some of the dollar store space management. If there's a, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right about that. We're not compelling the retail stores to do it when they should. And we are hearing from constituents in some parts of the state that they don't have a place to take their cans back. So,
Yeah.
you know, we are ultimately what we all, I'll just speak for myself. Ultimately, what I care about the most is my constituents being able to do what they need to do. And if that means supporting someone or another in this building, that's what I try to do. So like, you know, we're hearing from people, this isn't working for me because I have to stay in the line for an hour and a half on Saturday morning to take my cans back.
Sure.
So I'm trying to find a solution that doesn't make that worse for my constituents.
Yeah, and that's fair. And I think, you know, technology helps with that. But I'll caveat that by saying a single feed reverse vending machine is not a technology that helps with that.
Right.
As you all know, we all hate that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
everybody hates them.
Yeah,
Because they're slow and inefficient and they break, and that's why it's 2%, less than 2% here uptake of that technology. So that isn't the technology solution we need the more modern technology solution, which is not a low cost, old, outdated, single feed RVM, it's a bulk feed RVM that can take, hundreds of containers.
and do you see that in other? We've gotten testimony that those don't necessarily reduce personnel costs.
Well, Tom says they do, they sell them and they say they do. I mean, they've got pretty detailed data on that. They run redemption centers in New York State, for example, and pretty good data on that. Logic tells me that if the consumer or even the staff is dumping, all those containers in, and that's the last time they touch anything, except for flattened containers that comes out the back that needs to be moved. I find it really hard to believe there's not a reduction rate of that process, especially where a PRO is responsible essentially for the upkeep and maintenance of that equipment. So, I'm not a technology expert, I'm not the one that can design all the systems, because I don't know how to do that, but that's where I'm at, that's why we have to, I think, get there. That's why I think the proposal looks like it does. We just never accomplished this on this kind of timeframe in a state like this, Oregon has done it. But they did it over a long period of time, and they had access to a whole lot of money because they keep their own claim deposits and they don't pay anyone fee. So they had a whole lot of money they were putting in for. Quebec has completely redone their system, same way, to a high-tech, technology-heavy approach. They keep all the claim deposits, they do pay a handling fee, but they've got a law that says they have to reform. So the way people are doing this is the way we're describing it. getting there from a system that has a lot of inertia built in that's the challenge. How do we get there? And the concern that I'm trying to express here is that a raise in the meantime is going to compromise the ability to make those changes. Plus make things less affordable for your constituents. Us charging, us collectively, assuming everyone passes on hand, which it's almost inconceivable wouldn't, you know, $5 million in the next few years, it's not, so.
Okay. Okay. That's helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I really appreciate coming
Yeah,
back and sorry that it was a little rough, but
no
I
worries.
appreciate that.
It's all good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Reach out if you need anything and you know where to reach. What's the same?
Okay. That's right. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Okay, I did see Ellen, complimented and walked through a new draft of H710. So if she is still around, love to see that, but let's take just a couple minute break. Okay. All right, this is Senate Natural Resources, it's hard to say sometimes, Senate Natural Resources and Energy.
It's sometimes it's fun.
Yeah, it's like a mouthful. Anyway, coming back from the break, and we have, looking at a new draft of H710. And yes, welcome, Legislative Council.
Thank you. Elevate trustee of office listed council, H710 draft 1.1, Madam Chair, would you want to give an overview of what is in this amendment? For sure.
Yeah, I can do that. So we had flagged that some of the language from section we reviewed was a little bit, the wording was a little bit confusing. And so that has been reworked with input from the PUC. Super grateful, thank you. And as I understand it, it's still, everybody's still on board with that. This new constructs, it's not changing the intended policy. And then there's a new section that is added regarding the decommission. So that is also in here. with that, we'll turn it over to you.
So, because I didn't know if you all got the decommissioning proposal from the PUC,
I think we, oh, heard it.
but
Yes.
we did present it in finance.
Oh.
And so, some of your members have heard of it, but I'll talk about it more. This language was, proposed by them in sections 2 and 3. And, it's to assist them in helping the decommissioning process, for energy projects that have been rated to be a public good. But to start with section 1, this is the definition of plant. And so the distinction about whether something is a single plant for purposes of the program or multiple plants. So you recall that you're striking out the current section, the current sentence in this section, which is about use of factors to determine whether or not something is one or more plants, but introducing now the language down on line 17, which is not changed in this draft. So multiple electricity generating facilities, regardless of when each is constructed, shall be considered one plant if the facilities use the same electricity generating technology and are located on the same parcel or contiguous parcels of land. However, such facilities shall be considered separate plants if. And so on page 2, there's language that's highlighted. And so first, I rewrote the intro language to each so that just I think reads a little clearer. So it's a separate plant if the facilities are for individual net metering and self-consumption and have those 3 factors, not on the same parcel, different billing meters, different customers. Now, same plan, the facilities are for multi-owner individual net metering and are on a parcel of a common interest community, separate billing meters, separate customers, or the facilities have separate points of interconnection and a net metering facility and a standard offer program facility are not sited on the same parcel or contiguous parcel. And for facilities under each program, the total capacity located on a parcel or contiguous parcel does not exceed the program's statutory capacity cap.
So just the language has changed, but not the idea.
Correct.
So if you have two standard offers next to each other, that is
No. No, 2 standard offers next to each other are okay as long as they don't exceed the statutory cap.
right, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Yes, that's what I meant.
Net metering and standard offer cannot be located on the same or contiguous parcels.
So everybody, did you have something to? You might think you were gonna say.
I was gonna actually, what Ellen just said was what I was gonna ask to make sure I understood it correctly, but yes, so it's the cap on either program. Yeah,
Mhm.
do you think this language is better?
Yes, so it is more succinct, it doesn't mention that other types of facilities could be cited. Because that did seem like it maybe was a little bit confusing, but it really is just identifying what the specific no's are. Not standard offer, net metering together, and they can't exceed the cap. I think it's clearer.
Yeah.
I understand it, whereas before, I clearly did not.
Yes. Same. Okay. So we keep going? Okay.
Alright, so those are the only changes in section 1. Section 2 and 3 then are language that the Public Utility Commission is proposing and that I put into this amendment about decommissioning. So when the Public Utility Commission issues a certificate of public good, one of the elements in the statute that is required is that they require that the facility be decommissioned. And so I think they can tell you in more detail about some of the challenges they're concerned about. But what this would do is give them additional authority to hire some experts and set up a special fund, which is sort of like an insurance fund. If an entity goes bankrupt or dissolves or goes away, they can't. They just leave, open turbine or solar panels or something, and it's not working and it needs to be decommissioned, so this is proposing to have a special fund so that they could clean up the site if the owner went away.
I have two questions about this. One is this gonna send us back? Because it's creating a fund. Cause we didn't put this in finance, and I'm wondering if they're gonna see it.
That's an interesting question.
So that's one thing in just terms of process, and then the second question is how this interacts with the data center bill that we're doing. And whether this would apply to data centers or if, because there's, I think it's in or report back about decommissioning in the data center bill. And in the meantime, will this apply or, yeah. In case it-
I don't know if I answered that question, because I'm not involved in the news.
You don't know. There's one little reference to Act 250, Alan.
I didn't.
Sorry.
I can only follow something.
Well, we're not gonna vote it out.
Okay.
So we can ask that question and. We can also, maybe get some clarity about finding,
Yeah.
especially since it's already been there, do they need a report?
Yeah, and
I guess
Yes.
I guess I would just say, because I am planning to walk through the language with you, this is specific to electric generation facilities and energy storage facilities decommissioning.
So, yes.
So I don't, I can look into the language in 7.7 for you, but I don't know if are they being defined as energy generating systems?
We're gonna ask them,
but they have these components in them.
Okay, well,
yes, go ahead, Mr.
Ellen's absolutely right, it's just applying to electric generation facilities only. We wouldn't be, we at UC wouldn't be approving the data center.
Yeah, you would,
No, we're approving a special contract for the actual building.
Oh, I see.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the physical infrastructure that would need to be decommissioned. We're only approving the contract between the data center and the utility. So
Okay.
it's a little different.
Okay. Got it.
Okay. Interesting. Yes.
I'm not worried about having to finance because I think we have. We could, if it's in the news, but that's the same.
Yeah, well,
Previous fund.
Yes, yeah,
That's.
well, it could be, yeah, okay. Okay.
I just don't want more in front.
Safer. Well, I will have a conversation with the chair.
Okay.
See. if that
you
happens.
can ask Bloomer,
Yeah.
because maybe it's more of an appropriation issue than a finance issue.
Maybe we'll go both.
So, on page 3, section 2, section 2 is amending previous section 20, which is the build back authority that the PUC and the Department of Public Service have. And so it's expanding what they have authority to build back for, so the Commissioner of the Department of Public Service may authorize or retain legal counsel, official stenographers, expert witnesses, advisors, and consultants, and temporary employees and other providers of research, scientific, financial, economic, actuarial, accounting, or engineering services. Sure, you can ask the PUC about this, but I do think they're interested in how this fund is going to operate. And making sure that there's economic analysis and financial analysis related to that. And then adding specifically of that for the authority for to investigate, review, plan, or oversee or carry out the decommissioning and site restoration required by a certificate of public good issued to an electric generation or energy storage facility.
And so this is agnostic about what type of energy generation we're talking about.
Correct.
So it would apply to all flavors of generation.
Yes.
Okay.
Under section 248, yes, it is not only renewable energy generation, but it is other electric generation technology.
Okay. Interesting.
Great, so then on page 4, section 3 sets up a statute for the special fund related to the decommissioning fund. So there is created the electric generation and energy storage facility decommissioning fund. That shall be a special fund created pursuant to 32 VSA chapter 7, subchapter 5, and shall be administered by the chair of the Public Utility Commission. The chair is authorized to collect monies for the decommissioning fund and to make disbursements from the decommissioning fund. The deposits to the decommissioning fund shall consist of all decommissioning surety fees collected for electric generation and energy storage facilities that have received a certificate of public good from the commission, and all monies drawn from decommissioning financial instruments. The commission shall deposit into the decommissioning fund each decommissioning surety fee it receives under this subchapter.
Says the, yes, so does a surety fee get? When does that happen?
I think you should hear from the, I don't know, you can hear from.
Yes, that's true. Go ahead.
What is the question?
Oh, sorry, so it's referencing surety fees. I'm not clear as to when in the process surety fees come up.
Oh, so right now, we get things called surety bonds.
Mhm.
To account for the decommissioning costs. And there's a fee associated with that the renewable folks or the electric generation folks would be paying to the bank or the financial institution that issues security bond.
Okay,
So that's what the surety fee is.
gotcha. Okay. Thank you. Let's keep going.
Subsection C, line 17. Disbursements from the decommissioning fund may be made by the chair to undertake actions that the commission considers necessary to investigate or mitigate or both the effects of an abandoned, non-operational or disclaimed electric generation or energy storage facility. Disbursements under this subsection may be made to, onto page 5, pay costs to third parties to initiate or complete facility decommissioning and site restoration where the holder of the certificate of public good is unknown, cannot be contacted, is unwilling to take action, is incapable of carrying out decommissioning or site restoration, or does not take timely action as ordered by the commission. Investigate ownership of or ascertain the holder of a certificate of public good for an electric generation or energy storage facility. Take other appropriate remedial action. Pay costs to persons retained by the commissioner department under subdivision 20A1F, which is the language in section 2 that I just read to about them retaining financial and economic experts. Or return portions of the decommissioning surety fees as determined by a formula established by the commission to individual certificate of public good holders upon satisfactory completion of decommissioning and commission approval. And there's a couple of definitions here. Chair means the chair of the Public Utility Commission, commission means Public Utility Commission. Decommissioning means to remove a facility safely from service and restore the site to its condition before the facility was installed, consistent with the facility certificate of public good and commission rules and procedures. On to page 6. Decommissioning fund means the electric generation and energy storage facility decommissioning fund established in this section. And then here's the definition of decommissioning surety fee. It's the contribution assigned to a facility and determined by a funding formula established by the commission, not to exceed the average cumulative cost of obtaining decommissioning financial instruments for the life of a facility. The average cumulative cost means the customary and reasonable market-based third-party costs, expenses and fees associated with obtaining, maintaining, renewing, and updating financial instruments, and staff and attorney time and expenses. And the department is the Department of Public Service. Balances in fund shall be expended only for the purposes authorized in this chapter and shall not be used for the general obligations of government or for other government purposes. All balances in the fund at the end of any fiscal year shall be carried forward and remain within the decommissioning fund. Interest earned by the decommissioning fund shall be credited to the decommissioning fund. The commission shall have authority to adopt rules and issue orders implementing this chapter. The commission shall provide to the treasurer of the state of Vermont an annual account of the decommissioning fund. And so that's it. There's an effective date.
Okay.
Can I ask Brad any questions? Is this happening like where a company is just leaving the state and leaving property that's not,
We have never used one of the insurance bonds.
okay,
So we collect all these bonds, but the real burdensome aspect of it is that it's in the definition of surety, is that all these companies, all the installers of solar mostly, they have to secure these financial instruments and then maintain it. They have to hire lawyers, and then the terms of those financial instruments often change. Then they have to come back to us for approval of an amendment to their decommissioning plan. So it's a lot of work. This will obviate the need for all of that. That's our hope.
Okay. Okay, so it hasn't been, decommissioning itself has not been a
No.
problem, it's just the mechanism to.
It's all the work that goes involved with the surety bond structure that we have right now.
Got it, okay.
The commission will look at us.
At some point.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
technology is changing though, and there's a lot more repowering happening. And replacing the components of the solar panel to give it additional life. So yes, but yes, answer.
Yeah, okay. Great,
But can I ask another
Yes,
question?
Mhm.
So to that earlier thing, if there's this structure that's here right now, the bond structure and all the mechanisms for it,
Right.
this is not deleting anything, this is just adding, so would that still happen?
Would the bond still be in place?
Yeah,
I believe so. We are gonna have a proceeding on this, how to implement it exactly, but it could be that if a bond, the financial terms change in the future, maybe we can incorporate that into the fund,
okay,
but it's something we have to look at.
but is there statutory language that's in the law right now that?
No, we have a rule on
It's a-
this.
okay.
We'd have to deal with it there.
Okay. Thanks.
Great. Any other questions, please? All right, so I'm gonna have a couple of conversations. And we will hopefully be voting on this. Let me see, I think tomorrow. So again, how late do you think it's gonna go? 8 to 9, okay.
Oh, that's true. That's good.
So we might see you later.
We need to vote on everything after.
Yeah. One of the things I had thought about doing today was trying to vote out 7:40. But I think we are out of time, so we are gonna aim to do that sometime. As well as 7:10. So that's,
740 is still just looking at the as introduced, right?
so we do have a new draft of that, but
We do.
thank you, but I, just to be clear, I'm thinking about going back to the
As fast.
as passed by the House that is simpler. So that's the direction we're headed, and we'll pick that up tomorrow. Okay, so with that.